Thank you for listening to Scandinavian Crimes Podcast. Be sure to check out the episode links and be part of our other social media platforms where you can leave a topic suggestion or even share some of your insights regarding the subject matter of the episode. We will always do our best to provide a well-researched episode, but sometimes due to limited access to information and translation issues, some information can be lost. It is therefore good to do your own research and get a deeper understanding of a case of your own interest. So with that all said, let us start today's episode.
Welcome to Scandinavian Crimes. My name is Devante, and say hello to my lovely co-host, Delila.
Hi.
We will cover famous Scandinavian criminals who made their mark throughout Scandinavian history. So today, even though last time I wanted to leave you on a little bit of a cliffhanger, I decided not to. We're going to go over part 2 of Kjell-Åke Johansson. Now, last time I said Kjell, that was because English, that's how it looks to me. So don't judge me. I'm doing my best here, but nonetheless, you get the point. But once again, forgive me if I butcher anything in advance, as you should already know, especially if you've listened to season 1. So this is just part 2, and we're going to dive deeper into like the horrible acts and crimes that ended up putting Johansson back in prison with no parole, even till this day. And these crimes are also very recent, very horrible, and you will see why a lot of this was just, preferred to have not been in the news at the time because of just how crazy, the things that happened here it was just, I don't even have the words for. So without further ado, let us continue part 2 of Kjell-Åke Johansson's story. It was May 30th, 2002. A car is driving along the forest road about a mile southwest of Fagersta in Västmanland. In the trunk lies a dead woman's body. The car stops at the end of the road and a man steps out. The man poured gasoline over the car and on the woman's body, setting it on fire. He then called the police, confessing to murdering his partner, the woman. He was under the influence of alcohol and his story was very incoherent, making it difficult to discern what was true and what wasn't. A police patrol was dispatched to the location and he was immediately apprehended at the scene. However, what no one knows at the time is that both the victim and the man in custody had been living under the control of another man for several months, where the woman was systematically subjugated to both psychological and physical torture. Johansson had abused this woman to the point of her death, and it was the partner of the deceased woman who was forced by Johansson to set her and the car on fire. In September 1995, Johansson was released from prison, and 3 years later, he met a new woman named Margareta. During autumn 2001, Johansson and Margareta rented a farm in a quiet village of Aspa, south of Örebro, where she started a dog kennel business. Earlier that year, they had become acquainted with another couple who shared an interest in dogs, Dan and Birgitta. The couple moved in with Johansson and Margareta. This was when Johannsson's reign of terror truly began. Johansson had a problem with alcohol. Whenever he drank, he would become difficult and aggressive. None of the others in the group drank, but when they all decided to move in together, Johansson started pressuring and almost forcing them to join in his drinking habit. As the drinking sessions became more frequent, the atmosphere in the shared home quickly changed. It was during their poker nights that the worst of Johannsson's violent behavior emerged. Birgitta, known for the love of high stakes, would bet unreasonable amounts of money, which angered Johansson. He believed she needed to learn a lesson about gambling by punishing her. His idea of punishment was cruel, twisted, as he forced Birgitta to run barefoot on a gravel path and also forced her to bathe in cold water. Over time, the punishments escalated even more, becoming more brutal as well as sadistic. Birgitta endured physical assaults from Johansson where he would use his fists, his kicks, weapons like knives and even fire torch guns, along with dog leashes and whips. Her face bore the brunt of his abuse, but his attacks were not limited to just one area of her body. There was one horrific incident when he grabbed her arm, twisted it until it snapped, similar to the child abuse incident that had landed him in prison before. With her arm injured, Johansson tied Birgitta to the kitchen chair and encouraged his Rottweiler and German Shepherd to attack her. The dogs dragged her around while she screamed in pain, terrified for her life. While Dan and Margareta also suffered abuse, it was not to the same extent as Birgitta. On one occasion, Johannesson forced Dan to stand on a shaky stool with a rope around his neck while he burned his feet with a blowtorch. In that same incident, he burned Birgitta with the blowtorch, leaving her with severe burns on her arm. Whenever he abused Margareta and Dan, Birgitta would receive the same treatment, if not worse. Johannesson managed to maintain a facade to the public that nothing unusual was happening in the farm. However, they occasionally received visits from Petra Stevenson Moyler, whom they had met through the kennel business. She had a feeling something was not right in the farm. She perceived that Johannesson did not want her to talk to Birgitta, and she also noticed that Birgitta had a black eye, which Mola today now realizes she should have taken more seriously. After the whole Aspa incident was over, Mala asked Margareta, "Why didn't you call me or tell me? Why didn't you call the police or anyone else for help?" Margareta answered, "You don't understand, Petra." Johannesson managed to take over the lives of 3 people by threatening and manipulating them. He had successfully convinced them that he had connections in the criminal world and threatened to use them if they ever tried to escape or resisted during his abusive sessions. He repeatedly threatened to kill and bury Dan and Birgitta or send them off to Russia in a mental hospital. He also claimed to have super hearing, able to hear anything during the night if they ever attempted to escape, which is why they never dared to take any action. Their once vibrant personalities and social lives had been stripped away as they were now confined to a single building where they lived under Johannesson's control. But despite Johannesson's complete control over others, there were moments when they attempted to escape and seek help. However, their efforts were always thwarted by Johannesson. There was one incident where he intentionally crashed their car when he heard that they plotted to escape. When all their plans were quickly demolished, Dan, Birgitta, and Margareta found themselves trapped on the farm, unable to break free from Johannesson's grip. Their entire existence revolved around him with no hope of escape. During one particular incident in mid-May 2002, Birgitta took a brave step and reached out for help. She composed a desperate text to social services pleading for help. In her message, she emphasized that Dan was innocent and that there was an armed person involved. Social services promptly contacted her, concerned for her safety. However, when confronted, Birgitta denied ever sending that distressing message. Despite her denial, the truth was evident. The message originated from her own phone, leaving no doubt that she was indeed trying to reach out for help. Had Birgitta received the much-needed help mid-May, her fate might have taken a different turn. The window of opportunity for her survival closed, and the events that unfolded afterward led to her tragic demise. Over the course of 3.5 months, Birgitta endures relentless torture, with the intensity escalating in the final days when she suffers a brutal series of kicks to her head and abdomen. Even after she falls to the ground, the relentless assault continues, with Johannesson mercilessly targeting her already injured abdomen. After the abuse, Birgitta confides in Dan, expressing her belief that something is seriously wrong internally in her stomach. Johannesson, who heard this, he vehemently opposed any suggestion of hospitalization as it would expose the abuse. This was the main reason that Birgitta could not make it. The successive acts of violence inflicted upon Birgitta gradually pushed her to the brink of physical and emotional torment. She succumbed to the cumulative effects and ultimately died on May 27, 2002. When the group realizes that Birgitta has passed away, Johannesson compels the others to assist him in covering up the evidence. They place her lifeless body inside a car parked in the garage, delete incriminating photos from the home computer, and discard Birgitta's phone in a lake located several miles away from Espa. On May 30th, Johannesson instructed Dan to take responsibility for this. He was instructed to go into the woods, burn the body, and then take his own life. Prior to this, Johannesson manipulates Dan into writing a letter that reads the following: "Today I will end my life of my partner Birgitta and subsequently take my own life. I am tired of her infidelity, betrayal, and lies. Her psychological torment over the past 4 years has become unbearable." Dan is then axed with sealing the letter in an envelope, which Johannesson plans to mail to himself. On the fateful day, Dan sets off with his partner's lifeless body shrouded in a tarp within the car. Carrying a container of gasoline and a bottle of homemade liquor, he grapples with his emotions, seeking solace in the alcohol to gather the strength needed to set Birgitta and the vehicle on fire. As he consumes the liquor, he pours gasoline onto the car, igniting a devastating fire that consumes everything in its path. Right after the horrific incident, Dan called the police and said that he was the one who had taken the life of his partner, Birgitta. However, Johansson had specifically instructed Dan to commit suicide after the deed was done, but Dan's courage failed him. He did not dare to take his own life, and his consciousness made him go against Johansson's orders and called the police. As an investigation unfolded, Dan was apprehended by the police and subjugated to intense interrogation. It was during this session that the authorities began to shift their focus towards the Espa farm, where Johansson and Margareta were suspected to be involved. And on June 6, 2002, they were both arrested. It wasn't until Margareta decided to come forward and share her side of the story that everyone started to believe Dan and what he had to say. At first, she had remained silent, but eventually she found the courage to reveal the dark sides and the secrets that unfolded at the Espa farm. The investigation was difficult due to Birgitta's body being so badly burned, which made it hard to verify the injuries. But during the house search, the police made an invaluable discovery. There were 5 computers and a digital camera with deleted files. With the help of police, IT forensics teams, they were able to recover the images from the memory card in the camera. Some of the pictures were restored to their original state, providing crucial evidence for the investigation. These images not only revealed the dates of the incidents, but also contained various metadata that matched very well with the interrogation information that had been reported to the police, which was initially difficult to verify without any visual or physical evidence. Although not every picture taken by Johansson was recovered, the ones that were found were deeply unsettling. He had meticulously documented his despicable acts by photographing each incident. To this day, the motive why he kept these pictures and documented the abuse is still a mystery. They did a walkthrough of the premises with Johansson where he was interrogated by Ola Laurel, the prosecutor who led the investigation. They walked around the courtyard where Birgitta had been forced to run barefoot on the gravel near the garage, the same garage where she had been kept dead for several days. During the interrogation, they could tell how indifferent, cold, and cruel Johansson truly was based on his answers alone. Johansson, like many perpetrators, denied much of the abuse that he inflicted to Birgitta. While he did admit to some of the incidents, he downplayed their severity. During the trial, prosecutor Laurel confronted Johansson about his actions. He asked him if he ever realized that Birgitta could have died from the severe abuse and his refusal to seek medical attention. Johansson answered that he had never thought about it. Laurel also pointed out that Johansson had previous convictions for abusing a young child, resulting in the child's tragic death. Johansson struggled to respond to this statement. This made the court consider Johansson's past conviction as a crucial factor in assessing his intent, specifically what is known as indifference intent. It became evident that Johansson was completely indifferent to the consequences of his actions and the harm that he had caused. And on November 28, 2002, Johansson was sentenced to life imprisonment by the Lindsberg District Court for the events in Espa. Of course, Johansson tried to appeal the verdict, but it was upheld by the Gotha Court of Appeals on February 7, 2003. Despite making multiple attempts to be granted conditional release, he has consistently been denied. In the most recent evaluation conducted in 2017, it was determined that Johansson still posed a level 3 risk of reoffending, which is the highest level on the assessment scale. It is important to note, personality disorder will not simply vanish while being in prison. In fact, there is a possibility this hatred could intensify, potentially leading him to repeat his previous crimes. Johansson's crimes is incredibly sadistic as well as disturbing, and it serves as a stark reminder of the crucial importance of identifying and addressing domestic abuse while providing support and protection to the victims. The impact of the case continues to haunt people of Sweden, with many greatly opposing any possibility of Johansson being released, making sure that he will never have a chance to subject others to sadistic abuse again. I just want to say before we start this discussion that this is obviously Delila. This is my personal opinion, so nobody take this personal. This is just me. I'm curious on how this other man was able to not only be manipulated, but also how he was abused. I could not find any information about that. I don't know if Delila did either. I don't see anything, but I couldn't fathom another grown man, like, you know, just doing something like that to me. Even if they were like, you know, I'm a pretty big guy myself, but I'm like, even someone who's bigger than me, like, I don't know. That doesn't compute to me. I'm not trying to necessarily blame him, but I can't wrap my mind around that. Like, there must have been something, leverage or some sort of emotional manipulation, or I don't know what was going on, but I just can't seem to perceive how can someone actually do something like that to another man, specifically someone who in theory is a physical equal. So I really want to know what this dude looked like. Was he really a small dude? Was he like emotionally insecure? Was he like, what's the mindset here? Because I get that not every man is, you know, strong and powerful. Sure. But I don't know. I just can't fathom. I would never, you know. But like I said, I'm from New York. It's very different. You know, early 2000 in New York was very different. Things we had to do was very different. I don't know. But, Delila, go ahead.
Yeah, like, Dan, I mean, you can just imagine from his perspective, right? So he was in a house or a home with 2 other women and this, like, abuser. And there's, like, and obviously one of them was his girlfriend or, you know, lover, I guess. So, I don't know, maybe it came kind of, like, slowly and, like, unnoticeable. But I think that most people would react if, like, another man or another person just order someone to walk on your bare feet on the, like, outside on the, like, in the cold, or, like, being poured cold water and stuff like that. Like, I guess, like, I just feel like most people would do something. But I just feel like maybe they were drunk and just didn't really think that was a big of a deal, like a little small thing. And then it kind of just, like, progressed into becoming worse and worse until the point of just, like, no return. Because in the beginning, most of them were drunk. And, like, I guess, like, I don't know.
You see?
I also think that you looked up, like, how can Dan be afraid of him? Like, was he, like, bigger or stronger or something? And you looked it up, and it was like he was, like, average height and weight class and stuff like that.
At least how I would, you know, I don't want to interrupt you, but it's weird because, one, at least I don't have any confirmation on how small or big or whatever he is, nor do I know how small or big Dan is. Even I'm under the impression that even if, let's say, for example, that Johansson was, let's say, even if he was, like, my size, and, you know, I'm like not quite 6'1" just yet, but I'm 250 pounds, over 6 feet. Like, even still, someone who's average height, decent weight, they still stand a decent chance, especially with 2 other women on his side. So I guess in my mind, like, I get at first they was drunk. Like, I understand that part, but in my head, I guess the reason I'm tripping out about it is because, like, at first they're drunk, but then it started to happen when they were sober. So basically,
exactly,
it's like once it crosses a certain threshold in which you said is, like, not okay, then why didn't, especially he killed Dan's girl. That's your girl. Like, how can, like, what?
That's why I wanted to say something also, because, like, I have 3 theories. Like, in the beginning, one, he might have felt like, I can't do anything because then everybody's going to get hurt and maybe all of us going to die. Because remember, he did threaten them and saying that I know people from the other, like, the dark organization or whatever, like, criminal organization. He said something like that. Like, he's like, I know people. And maybe he felt like he was afraid of his family or, like, people he knew, and also for Margareta and Birgitta as well.
Well,
so you have to understand, like, that is the first theory I have. The second one, like, even though it started, like, in a slow way, he and the other two might have had like, I don't want to say weakness, but like, you know how some people are easier to manipulate than others? Like, as I said in the first part, the like mentally, like you're strong-willed or strong-minded, and it's easier for manipulators to manipulate people who are not as strong-minded as, you know, certain individuals. And I think that all of three of them might be on the same like umbrella of that type of state. And the alcohol, the third one, in my theory, like the alcohol did not help at all. And, you know, it just kind of like, they just didn't do anything. But I do agree with you that it's very surprising how, you know, as soon as she got hurt, like as soon as the other ones got hurt, she was the one who got like the worst of it.
Yeah, like,
and
that wasn't even his girl. That was literally Dan's girl. So I'm
that's
like,
what I'm saying.
I'm like, how another man how do you let another man beat your girl to death? Then after you burned her body, then you want to turn yourself in. I'm like, first of all, I'm like,
it might be a cultural difference too, though. Like
it
in
could
America,
be.
like
it could be.
You guys might be like, you know, super protective and stuff like that. I mean, most people here are trying to avoid confrontation in any way possible. But like, I guess if there's some degree to it, they do something. That's why I'm also like, I can't really, you know, say.
And also a little word of advice to people out there. Typically, these are two things. Typically, if someone's flaunting that, oh, I know I'm involved in criminal stuff, it's either one of two things. If they try to flaunt the idea that they're involved in criminal activity or they have ties to like gangs or whatever like that, it's one of two things. Either they don't, and they just simply know people, but they don't really know people. They just know of people. Or two, even if they are involved, they're low level. Like, that means they don't really have like much pull or say in situations like that. So, because I'm like, first of all, New York, like I said, it's different. It's different over here in America. One, it's different than what New York used to be. Like I said, back in the day than it is now. It's a lot more friendly. But that's not how people function when they're involved in that lifestyle. Because the reason you don't do stuff like that is it brings too much heat. Like, you know, why would you tell someone, yeah, this is my lifestyle, this is what I do, and then next thing you know, it's like you're telling everyone like, yeah, this is what I can do to you. I'm like, that's so stupid. Like, you're literally bringing more attention to yourself. That's what I'm saying. Like, usually when people try to manipulate you with that stuff, like, the chances of it is unlikely. And then if it is even a part of it, they're usually low level and don't have that sense of pull. But even if you don't want to take that chance, I'm like, if all three of them either jumped him or if all three of them left all at once, like, what can he do? You had the numbers.
Well, they did try to escape, though.
Yeah, he popped the tires.
They did try to ask for help, but they were just afraid of him noticing, because he did say, like, I have ears everywhere.
Well,
I can see it.
He psychologically psyched them out.
He did all this.
That's what he did. He psychologically psyched them out. And I'm like, y'all had advantage. He psyched them out
so much. Yeah.
I'm like, they had advantage.
And they did try. Even though he did psych them out so much, they still tried to escape several times. Oh, they still tried to ask for help.
Yeah, the thing is, he needs hands.
You didn't think that was enough?
No, hands. Like I said, maybe it is American, but I'm like, hands at this point. Like, I want hands with you. I gotta lay paws on you at this point. But
also, it's not easy to just like, you know, stabbing at somebody else if you never stabbed somebody before.
You best believe, like, if my life is dependent on it, you best believe I will.
I wouldn't think it would be easy for me to just like, I'm gonna stab somebody, but like if I had to, I don't know. Like I it's hard to imagine myself in that type of situation. I would usually just walk away, like try to be like, okay, bye. Because you're
thinking about a regular situation. I'm talking about like fight or flight.
Yeah, like,
I will do whatever it takes. Then again, I'm African American, so you know this is. This is truly this is kind of off topic a little bit, but not really. Well, I truly think this is just something that's ingrained in us from slavery, because we fought hundreds of years. So like, it's either we run, or if we can't run, we're fighting you. That's just, it's either one of the two. Like, there's no in between. There's no waiting. If I don't have a choice, I'm going to throw hands with you. If I can avoid the situation, I will.
But also, it's easy to say from a perspective like this, because like, I don't think it's the victim's fault in itself.
Oh, no, sorry.
Because they did. Yeah, I know. I just want to make it clear for the audience that it's not the victim's fault. They did try to escape, and it is scary if you're going to be manipulated and also abused and everything. And like, I'm trying to like also think from the victim's perspective. But I also understand what you're saying. Yeah. It's like, it's easier to talk about it like this, but you know, when you are in that type of situation, it might not be that easy, you know, because you're afraid. You're afraid that something will happen to you if you try something. So you just try to be obedient and just try not to die.
Yeah, I'm definitely not victim blaming. So I'm just, for the audience specifically, I'm putting myself as who I am, what I've been through, my life in that situation, and how I personally would respond, and kind of my rationale behind it, based on, like I said, how I've lived my life thus far. So I'm not victim blaming. I am genuinely curious though, how big was Johansson and Dan? I want to know the size comparison, and maybe if there was some form of intimidation.
Like, based on imagery and stuff like that, I think he looks tall, but it might just be his stature, like how he's just like, I don't know. He looks like he's big, but based on the information you found, he wasn't really that big.
But then again, I don't know how reliable that information is, because it was like rumored that he was just, I'm like, even then, if he was like, it wasn't like he was freakishly.
He was like 107, like 107. Oh wait, what was it again? You said something in centimeters. I just tried to.
I think it said like 170 or 175, but like I said, I don't know how true that is. I think
175 is more centimeters is more. Seems to be more like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if, like I said, I don't know how true that was. So don't take that with a grain of salt. But I'm curious on actually the size of these two men, because typically, even for men, I'm like, one, testosterone.
Weight classes matter.
Weight class does matter. So I want to know how big they were in comparison to each other, because usually, especially for men, we're very ego driven. So that's why I was like, it's a little conflicting, at least from, like I said, he could have been a very
I think it might be harder to understand if you've never been in a situation like that before. Like, and also I think you're more strong-minded, and you can probably like see somebody's trying to manipulate you instantly and be like, nope, compared to other people who might have had a tough childhood and have some, like, are easily to be manipulated because of their childhood traumas or other things.
I understand that, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm not victim blaming.
But I do, like, I think you're in a, like, this controlling behavior, as you mentioned. It's actually, a lot of psychiatrists and experts have discussed and talked about like his mental state and compare like his childhood and what it have done to make him become this person as he is today. So like, I did mention some of it like in the first part, but now that we have the whole picture, you can kind of like see how his like the abuse and the torture like behavior he done to the victims is kind of similar. Like, for example, twisting the arms of Birgitta and the other child, and like breaking bones and other things like cold water and stuff as well. I haven't mentioned all of the abuse because they were very, I didn't put all of the abusiveness in the story because it was very gruesome and hard. So I just did a little bit so that you guys can see the connection, that he kind of like do the same type of things. And I wonder if that kind of abuse was used on him when he was younger, and he just like mirrored that type of behavior and abuse into his victims.
I mean, it was very likely, because remember in the first part,
because like he does very similar things, and it progresses slowly too. It's like, and then he just like immediately becomes so like torture like.
Yeah, what I noticed as well from the first part, just reading it, is that it seems like he was starting with weaker people, so children.
Yeah.
As if he was trying to like build courage.
The weak-minded, the easy to like do things, yeah.
It seemed like he was trying to build his courage, and not necessarily courage, but, you know, just trying to like build up to actually doing it to adults, because children are a lot easier to manipulate. So it's just so interesting, because in the first part I was like, I don't know, it seems so far like he doesn't really do it to like adults, but then here we get to part 2 where he did it to two. He did it to like 2-3 other adults, but then much like you said, I think it's maybe having to do with the fact that, you know, they're a little bit easier to manipulate than probably someone else who has like a brick wall in their mind. So I think there's certain criteria he looks for in victims, because even the situation in this story where Dan and Birgitta, when they moved in, they had met him, and then I think he, even though they didn't say it directly, there was some form of camaraderie already, as if he knew.
Yeah. He was being all this like cherry and like super fun and kind, right? And then as soon as he started drinking, that's when he just switched, and that he did these punishments, and everybody thought it was okay because Birgitta was at fault, right?
Yeah.
We like I'm being sarcastic here, so you guys understand, but like they kind of like, yeah, Birgitta was wrong because she's bidding too much. That's not normal. So therefore, it's okay for him to teach her in a punishment kind of behavior. And that's when, he's testing
to see how far he can go and see who's going to react and do what. Because let's say, for like you said, just feeding off of what you're saying. Like, let's say if Dan was to react, let's say if Dan did do something,
he wouldn't have done anything.
He either one of two things. Either he wouldn't have done anything, or he would have knew that Dan is a problem, and he would have to separate Dan from the other two of them in order to manipulate them, because he's like,
or abuse him to the point where
he would have to get him into submission. But that's what I'm saying. Usually for like other people, usually that just wouldn't have worked. So chances are he would have just separated him or found an excuse to get him out of the way. He probably would have just outright killed him, honestly, based on how things transpired in these stories. But yeah, so that's what makes this kind of trippy about him specifically. Like, he was testing the waters, children, adults.
A lot of experts also mentioned that as well. They were like, there was a psychology kind of evaluation. Is that how you say it? I don't know.
Psychological evaluation.
Thank you. Oh my God, my brain just turned into Swedish. I don't know. Okay, so they made an evaluation of how, to understand him, right? Mm-hmm. And they could see that he had a lack of empathy, a pronounced statistical traits. He also had a high criteria of he had a kind of antisocial personality disorder. He had a high scoring in psychopathy scale, and also a high risk of relapse into redoing the violence that he had committed. So there's a really high score in everything, right?
I mean, that makes sense though.
So yeah, it made sense because he did redo it and also made it in a similar manner. And also he doesn't feel regret. So if you're not regretful, you're going to do it again. Exactly. So all of these, they did that evaluation, and also other experts were like, yeah, this was so obvious. Why didn't they do this before? Why didn't they see that there was a high risk? Because the whole system of Swedish, but also the other Scandinavian countries, the purpose is to release the perpetrators so that they can adjust to society. They don't want to lock everybody in. That's the whole point of y'all guys already know if you heard previous episode that's the point. Yeah. But in this case, when you have somebody who have so high scores in everything, that is a huge warning sign. Then the only thing to do is treat the best that you can and keep them locked in until you see any type of results. But even then, if the scores are high, the scores are high. Yeah. So he will keep doing all these controlling type of everything. He's gonna just keep doing it. And something that I want to mention from what the experts said, or the psychologist said, was that I found it very interesting. I didn't really think about it before, that they he wants to keep them, his victims, alive as long as possible, so that he can decide and control when they live or die. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, that's crazy. And that he finds pleasure in doing that, being in total control and also torturing them. I get that part, but I never thought about yeah, I'm going to decide when you live or die. That's the ultimate control. Yeah. And I just thought it was interesting, for you guys to, because I just didn't think about it that way,
Yeah, because think about it. All this is happening because of his childhood. As a child, he had no control. So growing up in that environment, he became the monster, but then now he's in control. He has the power. So now the dynamic is changing because he's bigger, stronger than he was when he was a child. So that makes absolute sense. And typically, not every single person in his psychological profile tends to do stuff like this, but it is also decently common for that to happen. Control. It all comes down to control.
And obviously, a lot of people was like, do not, release him. He's a danger. But like, he had, at least what we know of, one friend who, he was like, he made terrible crimes. Like his name, I don't know if I should say his name, but I say his last name. Arneson was one of Johansson's like childhood friend, and he saw him grow up and saw like how he ended up doing all the things he ended up doing, right?
Yeah.
So, and Anderson was like, he made horrible, like he's, it's hard for him to see how a boy like that who was mistreated and ended up doing all these horrible things, and he's just like, he's heartbroken because he felt like he could have done something, and that's also something that I found interesting, how every time in the story, both part 1 or 2, the victims were like, I wish I could have stopped him, I wish I could have reported abuse, or I wish I could have done this.
You said the two victims. I think you mean like the you mean the victims, or you mean like the plumber and the friend, like they both,
the plumber, like the witnesses and the friend and the the girl who was almost raped. Even Margareta and Dan, like if Margareta didn't have the courage to speak up about the crimes, or if Dan didn't, if he had committed suicide, this would have never been released. Like this would have never been noticed. He would have gotten away with it. So like if like the people, like the victims and the witnesses felt like they were like, I wish I could have done more. I wish I could have done this, like after the whole incident. But as I wanted to say to all of you, like it's not easy to be in that situation and know what to do. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody know that, you do as best as you can. And I don't want to blame you guys for what happened. He was just very calculated with what he did, and he knew what he did was wrong, and he kept doing it, and it's not the victims or the witnesses' fault. They just, you do the best that you can, and you report as much as you can, as much as possible, And thanks to you guys were able to give this image and like every information that was needed for him to be caught. So,
I will say this before we, wrap up everything, and that's going to be one thing that's really scary about someone like him is he was, at least from what I read, it seems like he was smart enough where if Dan were to go through with that suicide, because he had him write a note, it's something very odd that he had him write the note saying that his girlfriend or wife or fiance, I forget which one, was cheating on him, and then he killed her, then killed himself. The reason that's scary, like kind of smart, is often when it comes to domestic cases, a lot of police officers, and that's just due to their training, oftentimes will take that at face value. They still will do some very light investigation, but if there's no one else who can corroborate, or not necessarily corroborate the story, but if there's no one else who's disagreeing with that statement or that story, there's a decent chance that he could have been out on the street for so much longer. And like you said, because Dan had the courage to finally be like, all right, I gotta go, I don't want to kill myself. If he would have followed through with it, there's a possibility he would have never gotten caught. And also Margareta
having the courage to like,
yeah, if she didn't speak up during the interrogation, like there's a chance like this could have escalated for years to come, even after the fact, because the way he constructed the plan was actually kind of smart. And it's happened before with another serial killer in America. But also he wasn't
smart enough because like he had a lot of pictures, even if it deleted them.
Well, that's just a lack of knowledge. A lot of people don't know that about computer. I'm not going to tell you how to get rid of pictures on computers because I know there's probably going to be some sick person who's going to try it. But yeah, deleting pictures on your computer.
Oh, you know how? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay,
I know how.
cool.
But deleting pictures off your computer does not mean they're permanently gone. So most people don't know that, and they think like, oh, once I delete it, gone. It's not quite how that works. So yeah, that was dumb. But even still, the fact that
it was a lack of knowledge thing.
Yeah, that was more of a lack of knowledge that generally most people don't know. But that was still scary how that actually could have worked if Dan didn't turn himself in. And if, Marguerite didn't really say anything. And that's really why I want to end it. Just be mindful, be careful, look at the signs. Yes, I get it. It happens. And I know that sometimes in situations like that can be very scary, can be very debilitating. But remember, you're more likely to survive if you fight to the very last second. Always fight. Always, 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 because it's just a matter of time if you don't. So if you fight, you're more likely to survive. They teach you that when you do even self-defense. Even if someone's stronger than you, fight for your life, because you are so much more likely to walk out that situation alive. So, all my ladies, and I'll even say gentlemen, because
gentlemen too.
Yeah, because in this story there was someone who was being manipulated. Pay attention when someone keeps crossing your boundaries. Literally let them know on the spot. Do not say it's okay. Do not avoid it. Don't be afraid of that confrontation. Let them know right then and there it's not okay, because it tells them that they can't push any further, especially when you do it consistently. And trust me, you can avoid a lifetime of pain and suffering by being firm in your boundaries and who you are, so that way you don't have to end up in situations like this at all. So be careful, be mindful, and remember, practice, being in safe environments in general. Pay attention, and just stay safe out there, my friends. And to wrap up the episode on a nice, juicy, succulent note and positivity, what is something that you're craving?
Okay, so I've been eating pizza like 3 days straight now because I've been craving it, and I want it again. So
pizza, basically.
I want pizza. And I know you guys are going to probably kill me by saying this, but I like pineapple pizza. And you can just burn me on a stick. I'm going to stay with that all day, every day.
I mean, it's not terrible. At least I don't think it's terrible. Is it my go-to?
There's some people who's they just no. I swear all the Italians is going to cry now because I said that.
I was gonna say something crazy. Anyways, I think let me tell you something. I really gotta take you to this restaurant. The restaurant we went to was Jasmine, Jamaica. I forget the name of the restaurant. I could find out.
Yeah.
It was so good, man. I had this curry chicken. I had curry chicken and rice and pea with broccolis and carrots, and the macaroni and cheese was really good. The jerk chicken was really good. Oh my, some Jamaican food. I had it today, but I'm just that was delicious. I'm definitely going to take you. So,
yay.
Yes. Thank you once again for coming to the podcast. Be safe out there. And I think next week's episode is the Halloween episode, if I remember correctly, right?
No, it's not. It's not, because...
What's today's date?
I don't know.
You don't have to answer me.
Wait. Let me just triple check, because I'm pretty sure it's not. It is. I was just kidding. I am wrong. You are right. Yes.
Yeah, so next week is going to be the Halloween episode, so
Halloween.
Stay tuned for that one. I don't know if we're going to do a traditional true crime or a haunted story, but you'll find out. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we shall...
This is Halloween.
I'm so dead. And we shall catch you next week. Peace out.
Bye.